All right. Yeah, this is a Patron from Calvin. It's two parts, as it says there, part one of two. But yeah, Frank Zappa on Larry King. Um, yeah, I haven't done a Frank Zappa interview. The last one I really remember doing was when he talked about, it was either him getting pushed off stage or him burning down the building. Um, but yeah, Frank Zappa on Larry King. This should be fire. Let's go.
Tomorrow night's guest will be Mike Farrell of MASH. Our next guest, we don't have really enough time to spend with him. We will promise you other appearances on both television and radio. For the formidable rock musician, publisher, composer, father of future stars, Frank Zappa. Mr. Zappa has become a cult hero and has remained at the top for a long, long time. Rather than just hopscotch all over the board, we'll touch some current areas. And if you'd like to talk to Frank Zappa, the area code is 202, the number 342-6900. I'm going to try to see if you can see this. Mr. Zappa has published his own warning and guarantee to go on record albums. What is this about, Frank?
Well, could I read it, or would you read it, or?
All right, it says, this album contains material which a truly free society would neither fear nor suppress. In some socially retarded areas, religious fanatics and ultra-conservative political organizations violate your First Amendment rights by attempting to censor rock and roll albums. We feel this is unconstitutional and un-American. As an alternative to these government-supported programs designed to keep you docile and ignorant, Barking Pumpkin is pleased to provide stimulating digital audio entertainment for those of you who have outgrown the ordinary. The language and concepts contained herein are guaranteed not to cause eternal torment in the place where the guy with the horns and the pointed stick conducts his business. This guarantee is as real as the threats of the video fundamentalists who use attacks on rock music in their attempt to transform America into a nation of check-mailing nincompoops in the name of Jesus Christ. If there is a hell, its fires wait for them, not us. You sound angry, Frank.
Well, I am.
At.
I resent encroachments on the First Amendment because I'm a constitutional fundamentalist.
And these encroachments are taking place how?
Well, they take place every day, but especially since the Reagan administration has taken power, I believe he must owe an awful lot to the group of video evangelists that he does business with.
Because they're talking about rock music and lyrics and what's on records and what kids are listening to.
It's not just that, because the influence of fundamentalist theory, let's call it, in American politics is, I think, beyond the limit of what the government should tolerate in terms of church meddling. After all, these people pay no taxes. They're getting a free ride. The IRS can't look at their books. And you've got a president that owes them a lot because they use their television stations to help get him in.
But they have a right of free speech, which you would defend.
I defend.
And they have a right to say, I think Frank Zappa's lyrics are bad.
Of course.
Okay.
But they do not have a right to pass legislation or influence legislation which influences my life or the lives of people who don't agree with their point of view just because they've got an in Washington, D.C.
This is the crazy thing. Is all he's saying here is what the video that made Jordan Peterson so big was him saying the exact same thing, but of the other side of the political spectrum. That he didn't, if you actually watch the first video of Jordan Peterson, he never said anything about being against trans people or anything like that. All he said was, never in the history of the English language has any government, no matter how tyrannical, passed laws to tell people what they have to say or they go to prison. So if if you misgender someone, you can go, you can write a law where you can pay a fine or whatever because of it, and that's all Jordan Peterson was saying. He's like, that's a lie. And he's like, it's one thing to tell people what they can't say. He's like, I have an issue with that, but that's one thing. He's like, but when you tell people what they have to say, he's like, no government ever has ever pushed that on their people. Like, so all Frank Zappa here is talking. He like it shows you, which I hate to bring up the Bible, but yeah, the Bible does talk about the weakest being the strongest and the strongest being the weakest. That like it's just a loop. And the way the world's going with the people leaving the left, flocking to the right because the left is just insane, you're gonna end up back where he is now, saying, because I see it, like, there's a certain line I agree with people on the right up to, but then there does, on both sides, it gets to a kind of judgmental and pushing your ideas on other people. And that's, I think, the line that any creative, true lover of freedom is, that you don't cross that line of telling me like what to say or what to do or how to act. Like, yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in. It's interesting how it is a cycle, and eventually we will be back to another Zappa and not a Jordan Peterson. Do you know what I mean? And then we'd be a Jordan Peterson again. But yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in. Let's go.
And they keep putting up this smoke screen about government meddling in religion, but really it's religion meddling in government because of the economic influence there.
Now, what is their goal, do you think? They want to ban albums?
No, their goal is to take over the United States the same way the Ayatollah took over Iran.
You believe that?
I believe it.
All right, in the music area, what is their goal?
Their goal, well, they're using the, right now you have a cotton candy news story about censorship of rock lyrics. They want to rate rock albums, not country and western albums, because country and western music is like God's music, so you don't touch that. But any rock and roll album that has lyrics that describe explicit sex, body function, violence, what they call Satanism, all this, they want to put labels on it.
Like movie ratings?
And to be fair, country's got some pretty, do you know what I mean? Pretty well. I shot a man in Reno just to see him die. Do you know what I mean?
Like movie ratings, yes.
So that the parent would say, this has a B, don't buy this.
It would, well, it's not like a B. They have, for drugs and alcohol, they have a D/A. All right, and we all know the country and western songs are full of drugs and alcohol and divorce and, you know.
But it wouldn't affect country and western. How do you know that?
Because I debated a woman named Candy Stroud on the CBS Night Watch Sunday night debate, which will air next Sunday. And I asked her that question on the air. She said no.
It would not be on country and western, only rock.
That's right.
And who would determine the rating?
I don't know what the relationship is between Candy Stroud, Tipper Gore, and Baker. I don't know whether they're friends, they're organized together, but just...
Wasn't Tipper Gore as well to do with what that concert was for making people turn their lights off, or whatever that was, to save the planet by using energy light bulbs or whatever? What was that one called? Live Earth, was it? Something like that. I'm sure Tipper Gore was to do with that. Shows you them sort of people go on whatever the side is that's trying to restrict certain people, use that. And they don't really care about the actual, like he said, country has divorce. And if you're a religious person, divorce is a big no-no. Killing someone's a big no-no. But yeah, he's got a great point. Country music is full of it. Do you know what I mean? So is folk music.
In what she told me, from her point of view, she wanted the record companies to voluntarily comply with this list of demands.
As the movie industry does. That's voluntary. That rating is no law. The movie industry puts a rating on movies. You don't have to submit a movie for it.
Correct. But see, here's the problem with the voluntary submission. In submitting to pressure from a Christian organization, they have a right to their religion, they have a right to their point of view, but they do not have a right to control the world. Okay? I don't think anybody's got the right to do that. Now, that's what's up their sleeve. By submitting to the voluntary rating thing, you validate their their point of view, because their point of view is sex is sin. References to sex is sinful. Children should not know how biology really works. Children should not know about certain sexual practices. Children should not hear this. Children should not hear that. Okay? I don't think that the record industry is correct, because certain steps have already been taken by some people in the record industry to agree with part of their program. I read that in Variety today, that Gordikoff, representing a number of labels, has said we will put stickers on certain things, and denied some of their other requests. But you shouldn't cave in at all. Never bend over for a Christian. You know, when somebody says, if you'll just do this for us, think of what the ramification is. That's the foot in the door. The snake oil salesman is going to come in there and tell you to move your furniture around.
Don't you think, for example, the movie ratings are a good idea? Would you want your 12-year-old to see blood, gore, and violence, and when you see an R and they don't let them in, isn't that pretty good thinking of an adult society for their children?
Well, think about it.
Without barring the picture from being shown.
Okay, think about it this way. We live in Los Angeles. There are many cable stations they can watch, and the variety of types of things that you can see, including sometimes 7 channels of religion in Los Angeles. So it's a very good variety of stuff, and they watch it all. Of course, they have their favorites. I have 4 children, and they all have different things they like to watch. You know what I tell them not to watch? Don't watch a television show with a phone number at the bottom of the screen. Or if you see a man in a brown suit smiling too much, that's always dangerous.
You don't like religious people very much.
No, I do like religious people, but I say, if you think about what the Bible says, when Jesus got very angry when he found people doing business in the temple, and that's what you've got. Just because a man can afford his own television station and thinks that because if he calls his business a religion, he will not be taxed, the IRS can't look at his books, and he can exert all this political influence and then use the money to buy more television equipment, you know, he becomes his own little government. I don't like that.
Similar to the past interview, Frank, forgetting the legalistics.
Okay.
The First Amendment's pretty clear.
Yeah.
We can't suppress language. Why would you, for example, if I came out with a record that said, let's go out and kill cops, let's go out and rob banks, you might say that's in pretty poor taste, and that's purporting an illegal act, and while I have a right to say it, you can question my ethical values in promoting a rock record to kids, telling them to rob banks. Why would you have a rock record that says, let's sniff coke? Well, I mean, why ethically would you do that?
Well, let me explain to you one thing about the rock and roll business. See, I do not speak for the rock and roll industry.
I'm not asking you.
Okay, and I wouldn't, and they wouldn't want me to, because I don't agree with their practices. Basically, the rock and roll industry is a business that sells whatever product they can sell, and it's the law of supply and demand. If somebody wants to hear a record that says, let's go sniff cocaine, they're going to buy it, because they are sniffing cocaine.
How do you feel about that, though?
I don't like it. I'm not consuming it. You know, I think that it's not for me, but I wouldn't deny somebody else the right to hear it. I don't think of it as music.
An adult society has to do with regard to children?
Sure, they should protect the welfare of the children, and one of the things that you do for a child is prepare that child for the real world by giving it the type of information it needs in order to deal with the real world.
So that when they hear let's sniff coke, they don't go out and sniff
That's
it.
right.
Because they've been prepared right, not because the record told them to do it.
Right.
We will take your phone calls for Frank Zappa. He has many thoughts on many things, and I promise you on the next visit, either here, radio, wherever, we're going to be here a long time, we'll talk about lots of other things. We'll take your phone calls for Frank at 202-342-6900, all lines going, right after this.
Live on CNN.
Yeah, you know, Larry King is just being a good devil's advocate to him, to kind of, which I think you should do. You should challenge people's things. And I was going to say what he said about they don't want people to know about sex. Russell Brand made a very good point. It was the Christian right that ended Russell Brand's career in America. People would say as well the fact that he makes shit films, but he made fun of them boys, that boy band that their whole thing was they had virginity rings, and it was kind of their whole thing was like, oh, these are like pop stars that aren't having sex. But Russell Brand, he's like, the thing is, he's like, when you do that, he's like, you're putting people's, like, you're promoting their virginity rings and showing them, and he's like, and what you're making the people think is, oh, they're not having sex, they're not having sex, they're not having sex, they're not having, like, he's like, you're still putting that, he's like, sex is still the center of the thing that they're selling. It's just that they're selling not doing it, but you're still putting people's brains into that thought process by keep saying, oh, they're not having sex, they're not having sex, they're not, right, yeah. I think that's a very good point. Ross Brown's like, like, you acting like it's good that they don't do it, but still the fact that they don't do it is only highlighting the subject itself and drawing a group of young, impressionable people to the fact of, yeah, it's still putting sex in their head. Like, yeah. So I think, yeah, he has got a point. It was, without a doubt, the Christian right that went at um, Russell Brand over definitely over that. I can't remember the joke he made, but he done like 3 jokes on the whatever awards that he got in trouble for. One of them, though, is funny, where he says, America is a liberal country. I know this because you've had that George Bush fella in the White House for years. In my country, we wouldn't trust him with a pair of scissors. Yeah. Americans didn't like that. They didn't like an English person coming over there saying something like that. But Russell Brand as well said about that, oh yeah, well, he actually tried to write the least offensive thing. But yeah, no, Zappa. And actually, yeah, to kind of attack, that's what I was thinking as well, to attack Zappa for like, I want to sniff coke. Like, even when Zappa writes about, like, for example, we're doing the live Zappa now, how he put uh, Dancing Fool, Easy Meat, Bamboozled by Love. That's not really a, it's a great performance, but it's not a positive storyline to that type of lifestyle of, yeah, going out dancing, meeting random girls, sleeping with them. It's not a favorable thing of the doing drugs. And if one of the things that's most known about Zappa is he's anti-drug, right? Yeah. And to be honest, I have a problem with that. I say all the time with the religion, if you read the Bible, someone gives an offering to Jesus and they give him a penny or something, like some type of money from back then. And he says something like, whose seal is on this coin? And then the person says Caesar's. And Jesus says, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to the Lord what is the Lord's. Jesus didn't want money. So I find it funny that the church now lives off donations and things. And it's like, if you actually read the Bible, you realize how much organized religion is actually anti the book itself. Yeah. And it's actually, for its time, very advanced, the Bible. That's why to me, there has to be something, because there's very advanced ideas for how long ago it was written. Like, at one point, someone dies and some messenger of God says to his servant, go to his son, to your master's son, and of your master's son's daughters, you will pick a daughter and you will marry that daughter. And they basically say she'll come out and offer you you'll ask for water and she'll rush to get you water. And then he says, well, what if she doesn't want to be with me? And the God says, no, he says, if you, God, the God's messenger says, if you go there and take this woman, then that's your that will be your service to the Lord. He wants you to have one of them children and be a part of that bloodline of this family. And he will make his heirs, um, yeah, kings. And then this guy says, well, what if she doesn't want to be with me? And yeah, the he says, well, if she doesn't, then still your service to God has been done. If she turns you down and says no, then forget it. Do you know what I mean? And we'll still see it as you did your service. You went there and tried. Which, if you think about it, for something that was wrote a long, long, long time ago, that's a very kind of modern kind of way of thinking. Do you know what I mean? You think of like thousands of years ago, like that's just an advanced thing for a god to say. I was waiting for the book to say you will take her and make her your wife no matter what, but it didn't. The book, like the god said, if she turns you down, then yeah, just leave it, and we'll see that your service is done. Whether she, like, either way, if she don't accept you, just leave it, and we'll consider you done. So even like, yeah, just little things like that in the Bible where you think that's kind of interesting. That's a very advanced idea in its, yeah, storytelling way. But yeah, no, I will do part two to this because, yeah, as you can tell, I'd love to have a conversation with Frank Zappa. Yeah, I'd love to have a conversation because I think, right, he'd be a good person to kind of, if he was talking to, I feel like he'd be a good person where if he was saying something, you could sort of say, well, what about this though? Like, and then he can, do you know what I mean? You could throw things at him and kind of have a good, intelligent conversation with, like, you can tell he's smart. But yeah, anyway, enough waffling. That's part one. Sweet.